Hello, welcome to Newscentre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. We are focusing on the big meeting between US and China. China's President Xi Jinping is in San Francisco for his first trip to the United States in 6 years. He will be holding a face-to-face meeting with President Joe Biden. The US media is reporting that the United States is halting plans for the Indo-Pacific trade deal, which is aimed at countering China's economic influence in the region. The abrupt reversal in course comes after Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown and other Democrats expressed concerns about the effect of a new trade deal on the party's election prospects next year. The decision is likely to have shocked the IPEF members, which include India, Japan and Australia. Xi's visit to the United States follows high-level visits by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen to China. The summit is aimed at boosting communication between the two nations, preventing intense rivalry from veering into conflict. The meeting is expected to cover global issues from the conflict in the Middle East to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, North Korea's ties with Russia, Taiwan, human rights, AI, as well as fair trade and economic relations. To take this forward, I'm now joined by former Ambassador Rakesh Sood and strategic affairs expert Brahma Chellaney. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Brahma Chellaney, first of all, the US media reporting that US is calling off talks on the IPEF trade pillar. This seems to be a move to calm nerves with China, not anger China further. How do you see it?
I think it's related to the fact that certain Democratic senators have threatened to torpedo that deal if it were to come to the Congress. So Biden has decided not to move ahead with presenting that deal to Congress. But I think this represents a setback to Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy. The Quad is already at a crossroads. The Indo-Pacific economic framework was supposed to be an important economic initiative to counter the China-led RCEP. Biden excluded Taiwan for no reason from the Indo-Pacific economic framework, and now even the trade deal has been put on hold. So this clearly represents a setback to America's Indo-Pacific strategy. And to make matters worse, the United States is the main contributor to China's huge trade surplus, which is now the main engine of the Chinese economy. The US leads the way in terms of the trade deficit that it has with China, which has swelled to more than $400 billion and now comprises something like nearly 60% of China's total surplus. So in a way, the US trade deficit with China is helping China to accumulate greater economic and military power.
Right. Ambassador Sood, do you consider this as a major setback, not just for IPEF, but for Quad as well? The US commitment to the Indo-Pacific, do you think that comes in question now because there are political interests at play and pressure from the own Democratic Party?
Well, I don't see it as a setback for Quad or essentially what I would call security-related bodies like Quad or AUKUS or anything like that. But yes, I mean, it's like an unintended gift for Xi Jinping. I mean, it's a reflection of US's dysfunctional domestic politics. I mean, we know that US domestic politics has been dysfunctional for a long time. We know that next year is an election year. And but so this is I'm sure it would make Xi smile with a degree of satisfaction, but not that anybody expected the Indo-Pacific economic framework to be major economic development like the trade deals, which the US has turned its back on. So to that extent, I don't think that it is, I mean, it's more for optics. Essentially, it's a reflection of the dysfunctional domestic politics of the United States.
Right. So you're saying it's a reflection of the dysfunctional politics in the United States at present, an unintended gift to Xi Jinping. Brahma, Chellaney, coming back to you, when it comes to the crux of this meeting between President Biden and President Xi Jinping, do you think the U.S. priority would be to ensure that the military communication between the two nations gets back on track, especially after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan? The U.S. said almost stopped talking militarily or having any kind of back-channel military communications with the United States.
The US has been beseeching Beijing to resume military dialogue. Biden has sent a string of cabinet officials to Beijing since May. It began with the CIA director going there. It was followed by several cabinet members, including the Secretary of State, Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary, the Climate Czar. They all went to Beijing. And the message they carried was that the US wants to stabilize the Sino-American relationship. And in fact, it was Biden that invited Xi Jinping to the San Francisco summit meeting. Now, we have to keep one thing in mind, that meetings by themselves do not often represent progress. For example, Prime Minister Modi met with Xi Jinping 18 times between 2014 and 2019. But Xi Jinping perceived Modi's eagerness to amend ties with China as a sign of Indian weakness, which emboldened China's stealth encroachments on key Indian borderlands in April 2023. Now, Biden and Xi Jinping have met before. They met famously in Bali on the sidelines of another summit. And since then, what has happened to the Sino-American relationship? It's gotten worse. So we have to keep in mind that the San Francisco meeting may fare no better because of the power dynamics at play. On one side, one can argue that the US has greater leverage now over China because China's economic growth has stalled. Xi Jinping is seeking substantial reductions in US tariffs. He wants the US to ease export controls and also ease investment restrictions. So Biden may have leverage in that sense, but at the same time, the issue is Xi Jinping is also watching how the US is sapping its diplomatic and military resources by getting more and more involved in two wars, the Ukraine war and the Israel war. And this factor certainly is making Xi Jinping more willing to take risks. In fact, just the way he perceived Modi's eagerness to mend ties as a sign of Indian weakness, he may perceive the fact that Biden has been sending all these cabinet officials to Beijing. It was Biden who invited Xi Jinping to San Francisco. He may see all this as a sign of American weakness, especially given the fact that Biden's own physical health is an issue at home. And in terms of his re-election prospects, he looks really in a bad shape. So Xi Jinping might actually see this as a bit of American weakness.
Right. Why do you think, Ambassador Sood, the US wants to give this victory to President Xi Jinping? Unintended gift, for example, calling off the IPEF trade agreement. Do you think Taiwan is weighing on the president's mind? And another connected point that we'd like to bring in is what's happening in the UK. David Cameron's return to politics, return to government, return as foreign secretary. This has been welcomed by the Chinese state media, saying that he's somebody who understands Sino-UK ties very well. Do you think this global rapprochement with China is something to do with trying to make sure that Taiwan does not become the third flashpoint in the world?
Well, no, I don't. I think that the UK appointment or Chinese satisfaction at seeing David Cameron come back is not a sign of newfound British independence in China or anything like that. I mean, basically, you have to look at it in terms of what the US would want and what China would want. How far can the US go? How far can China go? What are Biden's compulsions and what are Xi's compulsions? Now, the fact is that, as Brahma said, I mean, there has been an economic slowdown in China. We know that their real estate market, their real estate enterprises have been suffering considerably. Uh, Now, the second thing is that she has also, some of the personnel changes, that have taken place have have damaged Xi's credibility because the defense minister has been replaced. The foreign minister has been changed, and they both were appointed guys by Xi Jinping. In addition, there were a number of senior generals of the PLA rocket force who have been dismissed. So all of this is indicating that at least there is some turbulence domestically. Now, in addition to that, therefore, she would also like to come across as a tough guy. The image that has to come across is that even though, yes, to an extent, he would like some kind of relief on the economic front from the US, but he can hardly be seen to be pleading for it. No. Whether the US is going to be able to relieve any pressure on sanctions, or I doubt very much. On the other hand, what is it that the US would like? I mean, the US would like certain guardrails. They've been talking about guardrails on the relationship. They've been talking about putting a floor below which the relationship should not fall, and things like that. And among the guardrails, among the issues that they are talking about is military to military communications, which were broken off by China after the Nancy Pelosi visit. They've also been talking about the fact that, a nuclear command and control, there is increasing amount of concerns about artificial intelligence and offensive cyber capabilities being used to, in
Right.
some ways, interfere with nuclear command and control. So at least can there be an understanding that neither side will target this kind of infrastructure because it leads to concerns. Taiwan is another issue which is of
Right.
mutual concern. The issue of drugs, this synthetic drugs like fentanyl, which is a major
Right.
concern for the US. That is another, I mean, that's a relatively low hanging thing. But at the same time,
Okay.
insofar as Gaza is concerned, I mean, there again, I mean, the US would like very much that China should exert some influence on Iran to make sure that the conflict doesn't
All
conflagrate
right.
into a wider one. So there are a lot of interests, but at the
Right.
same time, for Biden, it's an election time. So he can't afford to be seen as it is, age is against him and all the rest of it. So he has to protect various flanks uh, where he is exposed in terms of his own re-election prospects. So let's see how the optics
All
plays
right.
out. I mean, do they try and score? Do they try and score points over each other? Let's see how the different media statements come out. I mean, the Chinese version, the American version, and all of that.
Okay. So very, very, very important from a political point of view, and the optics would be important, as both Mr. Brahma Chellaney and Ambassador Rakesh Sood say. We have to leave it there, but thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on Newscentre, giving us your view on this important meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Biden. On the other side, we get you all the important news updates. Don't go anywhere.